Okay, today's short course is how to request letters of recommendation, even from people that you have not seen in years. So, this is a question that comes up a lot. I think people get really hung up when they need to ask for a reference or recommendation letter for a fellowship or graduate school, and especially if they have to ask for 5, 6, 7 recommendation letters at one time from any one person. Well, first, let's go over what is the recommendation letter. It serves a really important element in your application because it serves the purpose of providing that external validation of your character, your accomplishments, and commitment. So, if you think about it, when you're preparing your personal statement and your resume and all of your short responses, all of that information is coming from you. So, it's just your word against no one else's if that were the only elements of the application. The reason they ask for recommendation letters is they want that external validation that what you're telling them about your accomplishments and who you are and what you're passionate about is actually true. And so it's really important to make sure that the recommendation letters strengthen your application and provide that validation that you are who you say you are. So, to start, some general guidelines. First, you really want to find referees who will enthusiastically support you. So as you're going through your career, this is why you want to keep in mind that it's so important to work hard no matter where you are, whether you're in school or working, even if you don't like your job or you're not crazy about your major, it's really important to work hard and to put in and make a good impression because when you do that, the people that you work with, your professors, your supervisors, your colleagues, they will enthusiastically support you, even if you're not that crazy about what it is that you're doing at the moment. So if you don't currently have referees who you think will enthusiastically support you, now is the time to start building that network of people who will say, yes, this person is an excellent candidate for this program. Next, you want to get letters from a variety of people who can speak to different aspects of your accomplishments. So when you're applying to, say, graduate school, typically they might want two academic references and a professional reference. So the academic references will speak to your ability to write, to speak, to analyze data. They'll speak to those things that will make you a great student. Then your professional references and the people also that you know from volunteer work and other outside activities, those are the people who can speak to other skills like leadership or project management. So that's why it's important to get letters from a variety of people because you want the selection committee to really see all of the positive aspects about you. Finally, you really want to use the letters to also be able to describe your personality. So sometimes, your personality will come off in your personal statement, but when you also have referees that say, this person is great to work with, this person is a great team player, this person was super enthusiastic and super passionate about this topic, when you get that external validation about aspects of your personality, that can go a really, really long way. And then the other thing that they can do is help to address any resume blemishes. Let's say you got one bad grade because of a bad semester from any kind of personal things, an illness, a family issue, or maybe you had a 6-month to 12-month break in your resume because you were just unemployed and out of work and looking. The letters that you get from your referees can also address those blemishes to say, look, this is a one-time thing, that bad grade that happened, or this person was out of work, but during that time, they were actively engaged in the work, doing volunteer work, consulting, doing other things. So that external validation, again, goes a really long way beyond just anything that you can say about yourself. So how do you ask for recommendation letters? Well, here's just a few quick guidelines, too, on how to make the ask. First, always express humility and gratitude up front. That's the thing. This person is going to be doing a favor for you, something that they're not going to be paid for. They're going to be doing this in their free time. So you always want to be humble and express that gratitude up front. You also want to be succinct and to the point about your ask. So if the whole first part of your ask is sort of rambling, or you're just going on and on about all the things you've been doing, the person might kind of lose track as to why you're having this conversation or getting this email. So you want to kind of get to the point pretty quickly, and then you can go into more detail as necessary. Third, you want to also offer to provide supporting documents for ease. So whether you are talking to your current boss, who might be super, super busy, or you're reaching out to a professor that you haven't seen in a couple years, who may not remember all the details about you as a student, you want to offer to provide the supporting documents to show them that it's going to be very easy for them to put this letter of recommendation together for you in their free time. And of course, when you're doing that, when you're making these asks, you really need to use a little bit different language depending on how close you are with this person. Is this the person you see every day, or is this the person you haven't seen in 5 years? So in the next slides, I'm going to show you what I mean by these different languages. So first, this is an example of a letter that you can use when you're really confident that this person is going to support you. So this is a sort of a example of a letter that I wrote to my current boss, or I think it was a current or very recent boss, who I knew for sure was going to write me a very positive letter for my application to the Ian Axford Fellowship in Public Policy. The good thing is if I knew this person well, I knew I didn't have any fear that they would say no or wouldn't make the time. So I could get right to the point and just make the ask. So let me just point out how I put this letter together. First, I said, hello, Michelle, first name. And in the very first paragraph here, I just mentioned, I'm writing to update you on my career step and to ask a favor. And I get right to the point. I'm applying to the fellowship. I explain what it is. It's 7 months, and I'm proposing this project. I start my next paragraph with, I would be honored if you would write me a letter of reference. And then I put a little bit more detail into this about why I'm asking her specifically. So in this case, I was proposing to do survey work. So I wanted her to speak to my skills in doing surveys. And they also wanted to know about my leadership and social skills. So I end this paragraph with, if you could speak to those things in a recommendation letter on my behalf, I would very much appreciate your support. I end this letter with some of the logistical details. Again, I haven't gone into like long details about, everything about the project or anything. I just mentioned the due date, how she can send it. I also let her know I'm aware of her very busy schedule. So I said, I know that the Public Health Summit is upon you, which was a big conference that we had every year. So I end this with, I would be happy to prepare for you some specific bullets of my past activities at NACCHO, which you can reference in the letter if you choose. So I make it clear to her that I'm going to help her out by sort of giving her really specific things so she can just quickly put that together in a letter. And then I just thank her for her time, consideration, and say, I look forward to hearing from you. So this is, you wouldn't do this exactly like this. It depends on who you are and who you're talking to. But this is an example of a very direct and to the point, confident and positive ask to somebody that you know well, that you know is going to say yes. Now, the next one is ones that maybe you're kind of certain they probably would say yes, but you haven't spoken to them in a really long time. So how do you go about sort of rekindling that relationship? I'm going to show you an example first of a professional example, and then I'm going to show you an academic example working with a professor. So this first one is, I use Michelle again. I pretend as if I haven't spoken to her in a couple years. So the way that I lay this out is, of course, I use her first name because I know her well, but I haven't spoken to her in some time. So I mentioned that in the very, very first paragraph. One thing I do here, which I think is from a social psychology standpoint, it's important to do because I say it's been some time since we spoke, but I've been following your work and I was pleased to read the 2010 report on the state of preparedness, which is something that she prepared. It's right in line with the work that I'm doing now. So first, rather than just jumping into who you are, what you're doing, let her know that you're the one who's been following her work and her career path. Your former boss may not be at the same company now as when you were working together, so let them know, hey, I saw that you moved on to this company, or I see that you're now a VP here or doing that. I think that's just a nice way to open the letter so it's not all about you. The next part, you can say, look, I'm writing to update you on my next career step and to ask a favor. So again, I'm not jumping right to the recommendation letter, but I do need to update her on what I've been doing for 5 years. So here I just talk a little bit about, I was working at the commission, I'm applying to a fellowship, I explain the fellowship. Again, I don't make it super long, but I do need to kind of give her a little context of where I am now and the fact that I'm applying for a fellowship. So it kind of needs to be clear. Then in the next paragraph, I say, I'm writing to ask if you'd be willing to write a letter of support recommendation in support of my application. Notice that this is a little bit different than the last one. The first one would be, I would be honored if you wrote me a recommendation letter. It's kind of a very confident way, like I'm honored, like I sort of kind of know you're going to write it for me, so I would be honored. In this case, I sort of couched a little bit more as I'm writing to ask if you would be willing. Now, this gives the person a little bit more of an out. If you say something like, I would be honored, then that person has to reject that if they don't want to write the letter. Again, I think this person I felt confident this person would write it for me, even if it was 5 years since we spoke. So in this, I go on to explain, why I want her recommendation letter specifically, what they're looking for in these letters. And, I ended again, if you feel you could speak to those in a recommendation letter on my behalf, I would very much appreciate your support. I have the same closing as the last letter. I talk about the due date, the instructions, and I say, if it would be helpful, I would be happy to prepare for you some specific bullet points of my past activities, which you can reference in the letter. And so it's kind of the same ending. But notice this is slightly different again, because I have to give her first the update on where I am as succinctly as possible, and then make the request with that more kind of careful wording. Now, the professor that you haven't talked to in 5 years. So in this case, and professors are tricky because, again, they're dealing with hundreds, if not thousands of students. So they may not remember you, especially if you have a really, common name like mine, Vicki Johnson. So I start this with a hello, Dr. Smith. I use their, proper name. And I mentioned in the very first paragraph who I am right away. Who am I? I was a student in your government 101 class in whatever year. I let them know I enjoyed your course. And in this next part, I sort of remind him why I was a good student. Before I go into the ask, because if you say I'm just a student and you don't give any context, he doesn't know if you remember if you were a good student, a bad student, an average student. So if you were a very good student in his class, you got an A grade or you had a really good paper, you want to remind him of that right away. So for example, I very much enjoyed your course. I was proud to have received an A for the course. You may remember my final paper, which I received an A grade, and your positive comments about the paper's detailed scope. Something to that effect. So that's a little reminder of what you did. Then you go right into the ask. These are busy people. I'm writing to kindly request your letter of recommendation for my graduate school applications. It's the same as it could be similar to the would you be willing or the kind request. Again, if you got an A in a paper, if you got an A for a course and an A on your paper, I would expect that the professor would be happy to write you recommendation letters. They write hundreds of recommendation letters, so this isn't anything different. I think it's okay to just kindly request the letter of recommendation. This, again, you'll have to kind of let them know what you've been doing and what you're planning to do. So I let him know for the past 2 years I've been working as a policy analyst in this government office. Now I'm applying to 5 master's programs, including the graduate programs, and then I list them out. Then I mentioned why it's so important to have his letter of recommendation. I put, your letter of recommendation would add significant weight to my candidacy. They would like the referees to discuss my academic strengths and class standing, and on and on. So again, if you feel you could speak to those in a letter on my behalf, I would very much appreciate your support. Then the final ones end the same way the other ones do, talk about the due date, the instructions, and the willingness to write some specific bullet points. So that's how you reach out. So what's important here, what's different here is the very first paragraph is a quick reminder of who you are and why he should be happy to write you a letter. And then the next one is just getting right into the recommendation request. Don't make this a long-winded update on everything you've done in the last 5 years. Again, super busy people. He's currently dealing with students. He's currently dealing with past students. So don't overwhelm them with a big, long letter unless you were close and you feel like that's appropriate. And then finally, then there's that person, you're not sure if they would be willing to write you a letter of recommendation. Maybe it's a former boss that you were kind of like, maybe you resigned, even though you did good work for them, but who knows? There could be any number of reasons. Or maybe it's a professor that you only got a B or maybe even a C in that class, which again, they might not be the best referees, but it'd be worthwhile to ask. So this is how you sort of feel it out. So you start with hello with their proper name. I hope you're well. It's been some time since we last spoke, but I was pleased to read again. This is like a professional example. I was pleased to read the state of preparedness. It's right in line with the work I'm doing now. So this is someone maybe you haven't talked to in a while, but you let them know that you know where they are and what they're up to. You've been following their work. So start it off with something about them. This is a little bit similar to that second one. I'm writing to update you on my next career step and to ask a favor. And again, you give them context on like what you've been doing now and the fellowship. Then you say, I'm writing to ask if you would be comfortable writing a letter of recommendation in support of my application. Again, this is even more, a little more nuanced in that, we're writing to see if you'd be comfortable, which is kind of to say, I'm not really sure. Because the thing is, you only want this person's recommendation letter if you know it's going to be a positive letter. If this person is not willing to write you like a glowing letter, then you don't want their recommendation letter. So I would say this is kind of a nice way to ask if they're comfortable, but giving them an out. So if there might be some reason that they're not comfortable, whatever that is, then they can get their out. And again, you put in more as to why you feel that they would be a good referee for you. And then again, I would say something to the effect of, I'm happy to send you more details about the program and my current work. And if it would be helpful, I would be happy to prepare for you some specific bullet points, which you can reference. And then you can end with the due date. So that's kind of 4 examples. You can rewatch this video and get these examples again if you want to get a sense. One thing people ask me is, well, what if I don't get any response? I sent this out and I've heard nothing. It's been a week. It's been 2 weeks. Look, everybody's busy, and emails have a notorious way of just piling up. Or you read an email, and now that it's read, you never see it again. Let's just face it. And depending on how well organized this person is, even if they glanced at your email, they may think to themselves, okay, I got to remember to follow up, and then they forget. So don't take no response as a rejection. Just politely follow up. If you haven't heard from them in a few days, follow up the following, ideally don't send it on a Friday, send it on a Monday when it's top of their inbox, and just say, hey, I'm writing to follow up to see if you received my email. I look forward to your response. So just politely follow up. A non-response is not a no. Usually most of the time, it means they're busy, they lost track of it, or maybe they didn't see it or didn't get it. So always keep that in mind. And as you go through this, I expect that many of you will get lots of yeses and positive responses. So I just want to wish you best of luck and good luck on your path to do something exceptional.